Welcome back to Awaken with Me, helping you become aware and empowered on all things health and wellness on your health and healing journey. Hello, and welcome back to Awaken with Me. Today, our guest is Steph Quiroz. She's a certified health and life coach, helping women and men create the healthier lifestyle they need, want, and crave for themselves. She offers one on one personal coaching through her lifestyle transformation program that focuses on key areas of optimal health in mind, body, and nutrition. Her battle with rheumatoid arthritis serves as a catalyst for change in her and pushed her forward and towards her passion of optimal health and helping others find this in themselves. She received her health and life coaching education from Health Coach Institute, an internationally accredited health coaching school. Prior to HCI, Steph received a Bachelor of Arts in Communications and Media Advertising from the University of Texas at El Paso. She also has a career background in public relations and marketing. She's the owner of SQ Coaching LLC and can be contacted via email at coachstephq@gmail.com or through Instagram at coachstephq. Welcome, Steph. It's so exciting to have you today on Awaken with Me.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's always a pleasure to share our messages of health, and I'm excited to be here too. Thank you.
Sure. So let's start by hearing your story about how you got started in alternative health.
Yeah. So overall, I grew up living a normal life. I didn't really take purposeful action in my health until I got sick. And even at that time before I was sick, I wasn't really making conscious food choices. I just was living my life, day to day.
Mm-hmm.
But I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which is a chronic, lifelong autoimmune disease where my immune system attacks the joints in my body. And it felt like my life changed overnight.
Mm-hmm.
I was in immense pain. I was also only 28 years old at the time. And so my first rheumatologist, he was actually instrumental in me taking my health into my own hands because he didn't believe my level of pain and
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how much I was suffering, and how much it was impacting my everyday life. Most of his patients were a lot older than me, and I was one of his youngest, so I didn't really feel heard or
Mm-hmm.
understood. And I realized I needed to put in the effort to help myself because of the lack of attention from my doctor. So that's when my husband and I started to research and read, and I really discovered that a tool for me was food, and I could really help myself through more alternative ways than just injecting myself and taking pills all the time. So that's really how I started on my journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned, or not funny, but a lot of people, I keep hearing this same theme of this sense of disbelief when they go to the doctor and being feeling unheard, and that's the experience I had as well. And it's such a curious situation. Like, why would doctors not
Exactly.
believe? Like, what would you want to go to a doctor if you're really not in serious pain? Like, what would be I don't get it. But
Yeah.
anyway, so rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune condition, and a lot of people don't know that. And before my situation, I didn't really know that. I've heard about it a lot, but I didn't know that.
Right.
And autoimmune conditions seem to be on the rise in recent years, and they affect women at a rate 2 times more than men. And you talk about some of the symptoms you were feeling, but can you tell us a little bit more about some of those initial symptoms and at what point you felt like something was really off, and what was your process for seeking help?
That's such a great question because a lot of people do something about it, right? When they have a first symptom, we kind of brush it under the rug, like we
Mhm.
don't really think it's anything serious. And I'm no different. I did the same thing. I think my first symptoms probably showed up in May of that year, and I did nothing with it. I thought I hurt myself in my shoulder.
Mhm.
So I just let it dissipate, and then it went away. And then I remember the 4th of July of that same year, I had immense pain in my thumb, which was really, really strange. And
Mhm.
I also ignored it. It hurt for a couple days and I ignored it, didn't know what it was. But it wasn't until maybe a few weeks after that where my hand completely was in a flare, and I didn't know it at the time. And it was, I couldn't even sleep. It felt like my hand was broken, and I knew I had to go to the doctor, because then I started to kind of connect the dots, like this feels worse than it did the second time, worse than it did the first time.
Mhm.
And that's what took me to the doctor, and those were my first signs my body was telling me something, and I was in that amount of pain. That those were
Mhm.
really my first symptoms and my main symptoms.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with the ins and outs of rheumatoid arthritis, but did you get a reason for why this autoimmune condition started to
I
affect
didn't,
you?
there's no, that's another good question. And that's the curious thing about autoimmune diseases is we don't always have that answer. Now with RA, which is rheumatoid arthritis, it can somewhat be genetic. It's not that way in everybody. But one of my grandmothers has arthritis also. However, she was diagnosed in her 70s, and here I was at 28. And
Mhm.
so it's kind of different. I know some other people that have my disease and nobody else in their family has it, but I think it's kind of within us. But depending on our lifestyle choices, even stress levels, or it just can decide to wake up and
Mhm.
show up in our body. Now, after that happens, we have an opportunity to use our choices to serve us better,
Mhm.
and or we can continue on and not take care of ourselves, and then our disease also continues on um, hurting us in the sense.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. First of all, your age, because like that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, because like I hear this constant theme a lot too. Like something happened to us that that prompted us to start taking better care of ourselves. But I want to help other people start this process and not have something life changing happen to them. And you
Right.
mentioned the fact that stress can prompt something like an autoimmune condition to just start, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that a family member had it. It's such a big thing, and it affects everyone, right? Or can potentially affect everyone. So thank you for mentioning that.
Of course. I mean, I think it's important that um, we listen to the signs, that we
Mhm.
receive. Mhm.
And so, how did you overcome um, your your condition to live a fuller life?
Well, after my husband and I did a lot of research, and I owe a lot of credit to my husband. And, you know, um, when we realized that food could really benefit my life,
Mhm.
it was kind of it was kind of like a process. I didn't jump into plant-based eating right away. I really wanted to be successful. I really wanted it to work for my body. So I planned it for 3 months. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, or, oh, that's highly recommended. I just really wanted to educate myself and be prepared for success in a sense.
Mhm.
And it kind of was like a snowball effect after that, because once I started eating better and cleaner, and I also knew how important it was to move my body as much as it hurt. it's still really important, especially for arthritic patients, which is kind of ironic. It hurts us to move, and at the same time, moving also helps us. And so I started very slow, and then my mindset was also shifting to understand and how capable I am and what's possible for my life if I continued on this path.
Mhm.
And that was really important for my journey, because I don't think that without those pieces all together in mind, body, and nutrition, I would be as successful as I am in my own personal health. And they worked together like a puzzle, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. No, it makes total sense. So how, like, what was your process? And it's going to be different for everyone, but like, how long did it take you to start feeling better?
Oh, I love that question, Nick. Thank you, because I was in extreme pain, and the thing about it is nobody knew. I was very quiet about my disease, and it was
Mhm.
because I couldn't handle the questions. I was learning about my disease and suffering through it at the same time. And I was reading and trying to help myself of what I could do, right?
Mhm.
And so I kept it very quiet. But when I implemented my plant-based diet, it was on the fourth day, the fourth day, that I woke up and had no pain. And my pain was so bad, I had pain from my jaw all the way down to my toes. In
Mhm.
think of all the joints. Like, it was just I felt like an 85-year-old woman. But that day, on the fourth day, I woke up with no pain, and I
Mhm.
thought I was dreaming. And I stood up, and I even kind of danced, and that's when I knew I am onto something.
Mhm.
I've got to keep going. And I'm not saying that I never experienced pain after that fourth day, because I have. It was a process. My body was building up for this all
Mhm.
my life. It felt like. But I knew that that fourth day with no pain, I was on the right move. I was on the right move. And that's when I knew this was something I needed to implement forever.
Yeah, and of course it's going to look different for everyone, but yeah, I've just been hearing more and more about how the impact that food can have on helping people heal and be better versions of themselves. So now you mentioned something, right, that's really interesting too, saying that nobody knew. And I think this is a sense of connectedness with people facing similar situations, right? Because
Yes,
you are still trying to understand what's happening, so it's hard for you to like explain to other people. So it also
exactly.
creates this sense of loneliness, maybe, as you're
Exactly.
going through.
Exactly. I felt very misunderstood for things, but even though it wasn't anybody else's fault, like, of course, my very close friends, my very close family members knew what I was going through, but at the same time, they didn't, because they weren't in my shoes. They didn't understand the level of pain that I was in,
Mhm.
and how much it affected my everyday life. I would drive to work, and I would be crying because it felt like I was driving and there were knives in my shoulder. And
Mhm.
so, and then I would dry my eyes and go to work, and
Mhm.
that's the thing about a lot of autoimmune diseases, are we suffer in silence.
Mhm.
And it's a terrible, terrible truth that we do, and it's because on the outside we might not look sick, but we certainly are fighting
Mhm.
something.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that because I think it's so important. A lot of us really are suffering in silence. But I in just being able to speak to people on my podcast, it gives me hope, just hearing people's stories, first of all, so other people out there can know that they're not alone. And I
Absolutely.
think it's helpful.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And that's even why I started being more open about it, because I was like, why am I keeping this to myself because the person right next to me could be going through the same thing. And I helped myself. I pulled myself, into remission, and somebody else might not see that that's possible for them, and we're all capable. And that's why I became even a health coach and a life coach, because everyone deserves to live their best life.
A big part of taking better care of yourself is becoming more self aware and how you show up in different spaces. And that includes in your diet and your eating and just your health overall. So be sure to check out the self awareness quiz on my website, www.awakentoyourpassion.com. It will have a series of questions to help you do a deep dive to become more self aware. So, can you talk a little bit more, like in details about like how mindful nutrition and how someone might gain more control of their symptoms using foods?
Yes, absolutely. So when I'm working with someone who really wants to get their eating on track, whether they're they don't have a disease or they do,
Mhm.
everybody wants to better their life. But I think it's really important to understand what foods work for your body. And I'm a big believer in my favorite paradigm out there is what works for one body doesn't work for everybody, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
we need to understand that and also understand ourselves to know how our body responds to food so we can maintain good energy, avoid the blood sugar roller coaster that leads to consuming more foods, avoid inflammation and pain in your body if that's the case. Um, so I think it's really important to understand how different foods work for your body, and there's different ways to do that. It's going to take trial and learning to understand different protein sources that work for you, that don't give you negative symptoms or feelings or bring your energy down, and the same for fruits and veggies and things like that. So it's really really neat when I do this with my clients, because they get to learn about themselves, and what works for them doesn't necessarily work for me, right? Or will
Hmm.
work for you. But it's kind of cool because we go through our whole lives eating however we choose to eat, but we're not always paying attention to how it serves our body. So when you're eating more mindfully, you're putting more attention and making more conscious choices, and you're also appreciating the experience of eating. It's really a beautiful practice when you're take that consideration to eat mindfully.
Yeah, no, I agree. That makes so much sense. Because even if when you consider the quote unquote healthy foods, right?
Right.
Not just because it's considered healthy, it's good for you and your body. And so going through that process of, really finding out what is good for your body, what works for you is really important.
Yes. It is.
And so you talk about movement before, and it's something I heard too. Like when I was going through my own situation, it was recommended that, even if it hurts, you still have to move because it's helpful. So can you talk a little bit about that and what role it plays in helping people to get better?
I love movement, and I always say movement over exercise, right? Because moving our body is different for everybody. Um, and I had a hard time because for my own journey, because I was a group certified fitness instructor, and I had to suddenly stop because I was like so sick and I couldn't do it anymore. But I started in the gym to lift weights, and I'm talking like baby weights because
Hmm.
I could not raise anything more than 5 pounds, and that was on a good day, because
Hmm.
I was in so much pain. But for anybody who wants to create more movement in their body, the simplest things can be to walk. Walking is the most beneficial thing for our life and for our overall health. It reduces you know, your cardio it improves, I'm sorry, your cardiovascular health. It helps with weight control. It brings a level of peace and focus within yourself when you take time, 30 minutes a day, to walk.
Mhm.
So even when it's hard, if you're going through something physical and it's hard to move, do the best that you can, and but also be gentle with yourself. If you cannot move every day, then you can't, and you
Mhm.
forgive yourself and you try again the next day.
Mhm. And
it's
thank you
it's
so much for that. Yeah, that is very important. Be gentle with yourself because a lot of times we are too hard on ourselves.
we're too hard, and then we give up, you know. "Ah,
Yeah.
I'm in pain, I can't do it, I'm never going to do it." So then they stop. But if they're more compassionate with themselves, they listen to their body and say, "You know what, today is probably not a good day, and I'll try again tomorrow."
Yeah.
That keeps your momentum.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So helpful. So as we are wrapping up, what would be your message out there to anyone, whether they have an autoimmune condition or not?
I want your listeners, Nick, to know that they all deserve to live their best life. No matter what their life's path has them on in their journey, they're capable and they're deserving to live their best and healthiest life. Now, I love being a health and life coach because I get to be present when my clients transform their lifestyles and they feel empowered when they're on that journey. Um, I really think that everybody has this possibility and capability, and they just need to see it in themselves. And even if they don't, get support, because someone like a coach or somebody else who can support you can really help hold you accountable, and it'll take you far for where you want to go in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. So how can people find you? I know I mentioned it at the beginning, but what do you want to
Sure.
share?
No, sure. Listeners, you can visit my website at Coach Steph, and that's with a PHQ.com, CoachStephQ.com. Also on my website, they can access my free 5-day coaching series, which is really focused on moving you forward in optimal living, kind of opens those doors for you. I share healthful information in overcoming fears of change, to mindful nutrition, movement, and other things. Um, and I also offer one-to-one lifestyle transformation program to help you get on your healthy lifestyle journey. But they can also reach me and find me on my website or even on Instagram, which is at Coach Steph Q.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us on Awaken with me. It was lovely talking with you.
Likewise, Nick, thank you for the opportunity.
So, today's learning outcome is that we need to be gentle with ourselves. Even as we're doing movement, that is so essential because even though it hurts as we are going through our healing, movement is essential because it helps with that healing journey. So, be sure to do some kind of movement, whatever works for you. It will be different for everyone. And be sure to be gentle with yourself. Thanks for joining us on today's podcast. If you haven't yet done so, hit the subscribe button for new content every 2 weeks. And be sure to visit my website, awakentoyourpassion.com, for more resources. Until next time, take care.